You're 15 years old. You're standing at the entrance to the Temple of Ishtar in Babylon. Behind you is your family. In front of you is a corridor lined with benches. The year is 483 before Christ. It's your first time here for this purpose. You're required by law to sit on one of those benches, to wait, and to leave with the first man who throws a silver coin in your lap. Picture this: the greatest city on earth, 1 million people, hanging gardens, astronomical precision, legal codes that won't be matched for 1,000 years. And, at the center of it all, this temple, this requirement, this ritual. The Greek historian Herodotus documented it in 440 before Christ. He called it the foulest custom of Babylon. But here's what he got wrong. It wasn't foul, not to the Babylonians. It was sacred. You need to understand the theology before you can understand the horror. Because the horror doesn't come from the ritual itself. It comes from how that theology was weaponized. Ishtar is the goddess of love, war, sex, and political power. She's the most powerful deity in the Mesopotamian pantheon. More powerful than Marduk technically, though don't say that too loudly. Her mythology is specific. She descended to the underworld and returned. She holds power over life, death, and fertility. And she demands participation, not worship. Participation. Every woman born in Babylon must serve Ishtar once, not as a priestess, as a physical embodiment of the goddess's sacred sexuality. The theology is precise. When you sit on that bench, you stop being yourself. You become a temporary vessel for Ishtar. The man who selects you isn't engaging with you. He's engaging with the goddess through you. Therefore, it's not prostitution. It's prayer. That's what makes it mandatory. That's what makes it legally enforced. That's what makes refusal not just illegal, but blasphemous. Here's where it gets complicated. The ritual itself has rules, strict ones. First rule: the woman cannot choose. She must accept the first man who throws a coin, regardless of who he is. Age, appearance, status, irrelevant. Second rule: the coin can be any value. Herodotus mentions this specifically. It can be a fortune or the minimum possible silver. Doesn't matter. The coin is symbolic, not transactional. Third rule: the woman cannot leave until she's selected. Some women are there for hours, some for days. The beautiful and wealthy are chosen quickly. Herodotus records that some women were there for 3 or 4 years. Think about that. 3 years, sitting on a bench in a temple, waiting for a man to throw a coin in your lap. Fourth rule: once the coin is thrown, the woman must speak a specific phrase. May the goddess Ishtar bless you. Then she must follow the man to one of the private chambers in the temple complex. Fifth rule: after the ritual is complete, the woman must donate the coin to the temple treasury. She cannot keep it. It's not payment. It's an offering. If you believe that the documented records of the religious systems they tried to erase must be understood, consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us reveal the truth behind the sacred texts they'd prefer remained buried. Now let me tell you what actually happened. Not the theology, the reality. The reality. The Temple of Ishtar in Babylon covered 23 acres. Archaeological excavations between 1899 and 1917 uncovered the floor plan. We know exactly what was there. The main sanctuary, administrative buildings, storage facilities, residential quarters for priests, and the benches. 3 long corridors, each approximately 200 feet long, lined with stone benches. Professor Robert Koldewey, who led the excavation, found evidence of systematic renovation to these corridors. They were maintained, cleaned, repaired regularly. High traffic areas, used constantly. Behind these corridors, excavations revealed 63 small chambers, each approximately 8 feet by 8 feet. Stone floors, single doorways, no windows. Each chamber contained evidence of a drainage system, and a stone platform, approximately 3 feet high. The drainage systems were connected to the temple's main sewage network. They were designed for regular cleaning. These weren't storage rooms. These were the private chambers where the ritual was completed. 63 chambers. Archaeological evidence of constant use for at least 400 years. Do the math. How many women? How many times per day? How many years? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of women, possibly over 1 million across the ritual's documented history. This wasn't occasional. This was systematic. Here's what the tablets say. We have Mesopotamian administrative tablets from the Temple of Ishtar dating between 570 before Christ and 482 before Christ. They're written in Akkadian, they're tax records, mostly, but buried in those records are references to the ritual. They call it the Nishtu Isti, the sacred fulfillment. Tablet BM 79368, housed in the British Museum, contains a roster. It lists names, a roster. It lists names, female names. Next to each name is a date and a notation. The notation uses the Akkadian word for completed, kibkatuo. The dates span a 2-month period. There are 407 names on this one tablet. That's just 2 months, in one section of one temple, in one city. Now here's where the theology meets the exploitation. The ritual was mandatory, but enforcement was flexible. If you were wealthy, your family could pay for privacy. They couldn't exempt you, but they could pay for the temple to be closed to general access during your service. Essentially, a man would be arranged beforehand. Someone appropriate. Someone safe. The ritual would be completed quickly, quietly, without the waiting period. If you were poor, you waited. You sat on the public benches. You accepted whoever threw the coin. Herodotus mentions that beautiful women were chosen within hours, attractive women within days. But the women who weren't beautiful, the women who were disfigured or disabled or simply unremarkable, they waited and waited. 3 to 4 years, Herodotus says. Some women brought tents, Some women brought tents. They camped in the temple courtyards because they couldn't afford to maintain homes while waiting. Think about the psychology. You're 17. You've been sitting on this bench for 6 months. Women who arrived after you have been chosen. You are still waiting. You can't leave. Leaving means you never fulfilled your sacred duty. It means you're in permanent religious violation. It means social exile. So you wait. 6 months becomes a year. A year becomes 2. Your family can't help you. They visit, they bring food, but they can't pay someone to choose you. That would violate the fundamental principle. The goddess must choose through the man. Forcing the choice invalidates the ritual. Finally, a man throws a coin. You don't look at him. You say the phrase, "May the goddess Ishtar bless you." You follow him to one of those 8x8 chambers. What happens in that chamber is between you, the man, and the goddess. There's no oversight, no witnesses, no time limit. When it's done, you return to the corridor. You donate the coin. A priest marks your name on a tablet. You're free. You've fulfilled your sacred duty. You can marry now. Only women who've completed the Nishtu Isti can legally marry in Babylon. You never speak about it. Speaking about it is forbidden. Not by law, but by custom. Women who've completed the ritual don't discuss it. That silence is maintained for 2,000 years. Act 2. The systematic nature becomes clear when you read the administrative documents. The Temple of Ishtar wasn't just a religious site. It was an economic engine. Tablet BM 83204 is a financial record from 503 before Christ. It lists temple revenue sources, donations from wealthy families, tax payments from merchants, agricultural tributes, and one line item that appears monthly, Nishtu silver. The amount varies but averages around 43 talents of silver per month. A talent is approximately 75 pounds. 43 talents. That's 3,225 pounds of silver per month. How many coins does that represent? Herodotus says. Coins could be minimal value. Let's assume an average coin is 1 shekel. That's approximately 0.4 ounces of silver. 3,225 pounds equals 51,600 ounces. Divided by 0.4. That's 129,000 coins per month. 129,000 women completing the ritual every month. Even if these numbers are inflated by a factor of 10, we're still talking about 12,900 women per month in Babylon alone. And this is just Babylon. The ritual existed in other Mesopotamian cities. Uruk, Ur, Sippar. We're talking about an industrial-scale religious system. Here's what nobody expected. The system had administrators. Tablet BM 85766 contains a job description for a temple official called a Inu Nishtu, a lord of sacred fulfillment. His responsibilities are listed: maintain the benches, ensure cleanliness of the chambers, record the names of completed women, collect the coins, and this line, ensure appropriate selection by visitors. What does appropriate mean? The tablet doesn't specify, but think about the implication. There's oversight, there's management, there's a bureaucracy ensuring the system functions smoothly. This wasn't chaos. This was administration. Archaeological evidence shows the chambers were cleaned daily. The benches were repaired regularly. There are records of payments to maintenance staff. The Temple of Ishtar employed people whose entire job was facilitating this system. If this moment in history doesn't move you to understand how religious doctrine becomes exploitation machinery, you might be missing the lesson our ancestors couldn't speak aloud. Act 3. The psychological impact on the women themselves. We have almost no first-person accounts. Women didn't write about this, or if they did, those writings didn't survive. But we have indirect evidence: medical texts, legal documents, letters. Tablet NBC 8023, a medical text from around 520 before Christ, contains treatments for what it calls post-Nyashtu distress. Symptoms include inability to eat, persistent nightmares, refusal to leave home, fear of temples. Treatment recommendations: herbal preparations, prayer, time. The text notes this condition is common among those whose fulfillment was delayed. Translation: women who waited years before being chosen developed what we now recognize as trauma responses. And the medical establishment had a name for it: a treatment protocol, because it was common enough to require documentation. Here's a legal tablet from 497 before Christ, a marriage contract. Standard format mostly, but buried in the standard language is this clause: the bride has completed Nishtu Isti in year 12 of Darius. The groom acknowledges completion and waives inquiry into duration. Waives inquiry into duration. That's a standard clause. It appears in other marriage contracts from this period. It means the husband agrees not to ask how long she waited, not to ask what happened in the chamber, not to inquire into the details. The fact that this is standard language tells you something. It tells you the details were often painful enough that men needed to legally promise not to ask. Act 4. The defense of the system. Here's the thing that makes this complicated. Many Babylonian women defended the ritual. We have evidence of this from later Greek sources. When Greek writers criticized the practice, Babylonian women responded. Not just priests defending their system, women themselves. Their argument was theological. The ritual ensures Ishtar's favor. It maintains the cosmic order. It's a sacred duty, not exploitation. One fragmentary text, possibly from the 4th century BC, contains what might be a Babylonian woman's response to criticism. You Greeks with your virgin goddesses understand nothing of the sacred feminine. Ishtar is desire incarnate. To serve her is to embody her nature. To refuse is to reject femininity itself. The text continues. Our mothers did this. Their mothers did this. For 2,000 years, Babylon has stood. The ritual is why. Think about what it means when victims defend their own exploitation. Not because they're stupid, not because they don't understand, but because the alternative is admitting that something sacred was actually profane. that their suffering had no meaning. That's the genius of weaponized theology. It makes resistance feel like sacrilege. Act 5. The suppression and rediscovery. The ritual ended around 324 before Christ when Alexander the Great conquered Babylon. Greek administration dismantled the system almost immediately. Not for moral reasons, for economic ones. The temple silver was redirected to military funding. The religious justification was dismissed as superstition. Within 2 generations, the practice stopped completely. Within 5 generations, most Babylonians didn't know it had existed. That's how quickly systematic exploitation can be erased when the economic and religious structure supporting it collapses. For 2,000 years, nobody knew about this ritual except through brief mentions in Herodotus. Most scholars assumed he was exaggerating or lying. Then came the excavations. 1899 to 1917. German archaeologist Robert Koldewey uncovered the Temple of Ishtar. The benches, the chambers, the drainage systems. And in 1923, British archaeologists translating Babylonian tablets found the administrative records, the names, the dates, the revenue logs. It wasn't mythology. It wasn't exaggeration. It was documented policy. Here's what makes this especially disturbing. The tablets were initially withheld from publication. The British Museum acquired them in 1923. They weren't fully published until 1974. 51 years later. Why? The official reason was ongoing translation work. The actual reason, according to correspondence between museum officials, was concern about public reception. A 1931 letter from the museum's Mesopotamian department head to the Board of Trustees says, "Full publication of the Nishtu tablets may provide ammunition to those who seek to discredit ancient Near Eastern civilization as barbaric." Translation: we don't want people to know about this because it makes ancient Babylon look bad. So the evidence sat in museum storage for half a century. That's suppression. Not by the ancient perpetrators, but by modern scholars who didn't want to complicate the narrative of Babylonian achievement. Because how do you reconcile the hanging gardens with the ritual benches? How do you celebrate Hammurabi's code while acknowledging the systematic sexual exploitation codified in religious law? You bury it. You delay publication. You call it ongoing translation work. Here's the final layer. The ritual wasn't unique to Babylon. Similar practices existed in other ancient Near Eastern cultures. Phoenicia, Carthage, parts of Asia Minor. The specifics varied, but the structure was consistent. Religious requirement, sexual component, systematic exploitation masked as sacred duty. Greek and Roman writers documented these practices across multiple cultures. They were universally critical, but their criticisms were dismissed as cultural bias, as propaganda against rival civilizations, until the archaeology proved them right. Now we have a problem. We have physical evidence and we have administrative documents. We have medical texts discussing trauma. We can no longer dismiss this as Greek propaganda or moral panic. This happened systematically to hundreds of thousands of women, and it was legal, required, sacred. Here's what haunts me about this story. The women who waited 3 years on those benches, who can speak for them now. Their names are on tablets stored in museum collections, rosters of completion, lists of fulfillment. But who were they? What did they think? How did they survive? We have one fragmentary prayer, possibly from a woman waiting in the temple. It was found on a broken tablet in 1967. Ishtar, goddess of love, how long must I wait? My family visits with food, but their eyes hold pity. I am 19. I have been here since I was 16. Please, goddess, let someone choose me. Let anyone choose me. The tablet breaks off there. We don't know if she was chosen. We don't know her name. We don't know what happened to her. She's a fragment. Like most of these women, pieces of evidence that something systematic occurred. That's the horror, not the ritual itself, which at least had theological justification that made sense within its cultural context. The horror is the scale, the bureaucracy, the casual efficiency of systematic exploitation, and the silence. 2,000 years of operation. Then 2,000 years of erasure. Then 50 years of scholarly suppression. This ritual was only fully documented in academic literature in the late 1970s. Most people still don't know it existed. That's how exploitation becomes invisible. Not through conspiracy, but through discomfort. Through a collective decision that some truths are too complicated to confront. The Temple of Ishtar of Babylon reveals something about how religious systems can weaponize theology to normalize exploitation. It shows how doctrine can transform abuse into sacred duty. It demonstrates how systematic harm can operate in plain sight for centuries when it's coded as divinely mandated. And it proves that even advanced civilizations with legal codes and architectural wonders can implement systems of exploitation so normalized that victims defend them. This isn't ancient history. This is a blueprint, a pattern that appears across cultures and time periods. Whenever authority claims divine justification, whenever suffering is reframed as sacred duty, whenever victims are told their exploitation serves a higher purpose, the structure is the same. Only the details change. If this exposed something you've never heard before, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep uncovering the religious systems they tried to bury. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next investigation. The woman who wrote that fragmentary prayer, whoever she was, deserves to be remembered. Not as a name on a roster, not as a line item in a revenue log, but as a person who suffered under a system that called itself sacred. That's what this video is for. Not to judge ancient Babylon by modern standards, but to remember that harm doesn't stop being harm just because it's sanctified. That's the lesson they tried to bury. Now you know it.